Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up 3 months worth of reading. Obviously I'm not talking about all of the books. What I have decided to do instead is look at my top rated books from July, August, and September, and I'm going to talk about those books here. I'm also going to do a second video doing my lowest rated books from July, August, and September. Having taken a 3-month hiatus essentially to work my real job, which was putting on a festival, a children's lit festival, I didn't have time to film these reading wrap-ups, and so instead I just want to pick the highlights. I am going to put on the screen briefly now photos from, I think it's Goodreads. So I did do quite a bit of reading across those 3 months. On October 24th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Haunted House Book Club is going to be meeting to talk about The Hole by Ha-Young Pyun, translated from Korean by Sora Kim Russell. This is about a man who has been in an accident and his wife has passed away, and now he is confined to one room in his house being taken care of by his mother-in-law. This was the stretch book for the Haunted House Book Club. I wanted to see what themes from the Haunted House books might transfer to this piece of fiction. It is being compared to like other horror novels, so I feel like even though it's not The Haunting of Hill House, some of the themes might carry over, and I'm excited to try and make connections with this. I'm also just excited to explore a new author. Like, her work is being compared to Stephen King, like a Korean take on Misery. It sounds good. The Misery meets the Vegetarian in this bestseller from Korea. A psychological thriller about loneliness and the dark truths we try and bury. If that interests you, please join me live on this channel on October 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In July, I wrote down that I read 11 books. There was quite a bit of starting and DNFing during this period as well, and anything that didn't make it to Goodreads or Storygraph is gone. Like, I would listen to the majority of an audiobook and then just let it go. So I have 11 recorded books for July. The first one was a reread, which was The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. It feels like Stephen King writing YA, but also is a weird book. It truly is a weird book in that it's dedicated to his friend's kid, Ben Straub, and his kid, Naomi King. And at one point in this novel, characters named Ben and Naomi do have romantic vibes. But for the most part, this is about family. We have Randall Flagg showing up. He's just the wizard Flagg here. He's creating chaos. Flagg realizes that if he wants any control over the kingdom still, he needs to do away with Peter. Peter is too morally good, upholds rules, is too fair, is too just, is too moral, that Flagg will not have any influence over him. Flagg decides to groom Thomas, basically make him his special friend, show him some secrets, but also scare him, and then make him dependent on Flagg. He grooms Thomas to basically become king after framing Peter for murdering his father. In many ways, this is a weird book. Pacing-wise, style-wise, character-wise, like there's some odd choices, but I'm like weirdly nostalgic for it. Like, this is one that I have read quite a few times and will continue to read. It's a fun read. It's probably a little bit too long, and there are things that just sort of get left and dropped, but overall, I really liked it, and I continue to like it, which is the important part and why it's on this list, because this is one of my very first Stephen Kings. Like, after I'd read Pet Sematary, really got into Stephen King, I picked this up quite early on because of my interest in like Tamora Pierce's works. I was a fantasy fan. Dragons, you know, I was like, ooh, this is fantasy, I think. I really liked it as a kid, and sometimes that doesn't hold up. So I finished that on July 22nd. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and that was a reread. The next book that I want to mention here is the other 4-star read from July, and it's actually a piece of children's lit called The Skull by Jon Klassen. So this is a Obviously it's a piece of children's literature. A little bit older, I want to say, like just as you start to get into reading by yourself, like a 6 to 8 early reader, like if you look at the font and like the pictures in here. But what this is a folk story retelling about a talking skull and a little girl who stumbles upon this talking skull. It was not a folktale that I was familiar with, but I just thought it was really beautiful. Like, I love the illustrations. It's like creepy, but kind of cute too, like in the best way possible. And obviously Klassen has put his own spin on this tale, but look how fucking cute that skull is. Oh my gosh. And if there were more in this series, like if he were to do more little folk tales like this, I would love that. The note that I have here in my notes is perfect for the horror reader in the making. Because this is for ages 6 to 8. So I gave that 4 to 5 stars. I finished it on July 15th, and that was a new buy. And the last book from July that I want to mention is actually a 5-star read, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This is a weird read. There are 39 women who are imprisoned in a bunker deep underground. They are incredibly like regimented, incredibly supervised. They have like toilets in a line in the middle, and the 39 women are constantly being surveilled by guards around the outside who never talk to them. They give the women food every day that they can cook. Occasionally they provide them with like fabric to sew clothes, but like they've been here for years. And they are all adult women except for one little girl, and they're not really sure why there's one child. She kind of gets the short straw because she was taken and put in this bunker situation before she really knew how the world worked. So like life for her hasn't been any other way, but these women have a before. And so they can sort of bond over that. They've tried to focus on teaching her the basics, but mostly they ignore her because they're all adults and she is a child, and they have like nothing in common with her. They don't want to play with her. In her boredom, she starts like counting the beats of her heart, and using like the beats of her heart starts to develop a sense of time, and realizes that the guards aren't on like a 24-hour cycle. Like it's randomly night when it's convenient for them, or it's like sometimes the day lasts longer or is much shorter. They're always switching things up, and so by developing a sense of time with this girl, they start to sort of shape their narrative, and you think it's gonna go in one direction, and then, and I don't want to say anything, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, because it is a novel that has haunted me. It did not go in any direction that I thought it would go, and I loved it. I absolutely loved this experience. Like the vibes, the like constant questioning of like, what happened? What is happening? What happens now? Like, you get no answers. Like every time you have a question answered, it brings up more questions. Or you think you're gonna get an answer, you think it's gonna go some way, and it doesn't. And like, I just loved it. I would love to see what else she has written, because it was great. Oh, this is a piece of translated fiction, by the way. This was translated from the French by Schwartz. So I finished that on July 24th. That came from my TBR, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So then we move into August. I read 10 books in August, and I want to highlight the 2 highest rated books, which were both 4.5 stars. The first one is The Body by Stephen King. So again, Red Rum Book Club, that was one of the pieces of content that I continued to produce, were the Patron live streams and the small book club, our haunted house book club. I think we had one of those during the months I took off. So The Body was a Patron exclusive. I feel like it's so part of popular culture, like even The Simpsons, like it shows up places. So I'm not really sure what to say about it. The vibes of like end of summer, like everything's about to change. Our protagonist is sort of on the cusp of making this realization that this tight-knit group of friends that he has right now that seems like it's forever will not be forever, when Chris, I believe, one of the other boys, is like, no, like, you're smart, you're gonna end up on the academic track. These other two ding-dongs that we hang out with are like not gonna end up on that academic track. Like, naturally school is going to split us, and like his reputation, his family's reputation for being poor and criminal means that he's probably gonna get stuck on that track too. Like, nobody will believe that he is capable of the academic track line. And so like he's really smart, and he's pointing out like, hey, everything's about to change when we get, like, when this summer ends and we get into school, everything's about to change. And so it's this real coming of age story. Yes, they are going on a journey to look for the dead body of a child that they've heard about. They want to go see a dead body. But like at the same time, it's very much these, like, it's the end of summer. This friendship is overripe. It's starting to turn. But right now, it's still very sweet, you know? It's heartbreaking. In many ways, it's heartbreaking. Like, all four boys are mostly able to go on this journey because they have no adult who really cares about them. I don't know, it was very emotional. It stood up, I think, to the reread. This isn't the first time I've read it. And it also isn't entirely overshadowed by the film. Like, I talked about how Shawshank, the film, really overpowers the story. Whereas I have watched Stand By Me. I don't personally find that it overpowers the body in the same way. Like, the body still, I feel like, is the stronger piece, standout piece of fiction from this summer. And it was just a fun read. Like, it felt like an appropriate August read, you know? I finished The Body on August 23rd. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and that was a reread. Then I borrowed from the library a copy of Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. Let me flip to my notes here because I'm gonna get character names probably wrong. Okay, so I am looking for a replacement for Harry Potter because J.K. Rowling is a trans exclusionary radical feminist. I can't support her anymore. She's actively doing harm to trans folks. And I've tried to go back to the series just as like a comfort read. This year's been a hard year, and I just can't shake the ick, but I am looking for that like cozy fantasy series. Her Majesty's Royal Coven feels like a big FU to J.K. Rowling. Juno Dawson is a trans woman, and this is a beautiful, queer, trans-inclusive narrative that gives a big old fuck you to a turfy witch in this space. We have a young trans witch named Theo that ends up being under investigation because she's so powerful, and they're like, why is this boy so powerful? Obviously, it's like this prophesized end time demon thing come to destroy us all because warlocks aren't as powerful as witches. They're like, no, actually, Theo is a witch. That's why she's so powerful, because she's a witch, not a warlock. She is not this prophesized demon end time bringing thing. Can I say anything without spoiling? No, I think the trans part is just the most important, that Theo's a trans witch, that this reads like a fuck you to J.K. Rowling, that we have this idea of the Her Majesty's Royal Coven being secret witches doing like secret jobs away from like the eyes of the mundane people, that this is all going on behind the scenes. It's not set in a school. We're mostly focused on adult characters who do have young witches around them that are sort of getting into the space, getting into being trained as witches. This has potential, depending on where this series goes, to be a cozy reread. I did start listening to the second audiobook, and it wasn't quite what I wanted. And then the audiobook got returned before I could finish it, so I don't know. Maybe it'll fix itself and I'll like it more by the time the ending comes around, but I'm back on the library holds list for it because my audiobook hold expired. But so far, based on the first book, I would reread the first book again. I feel like it has the potential to be that cozy, grown-up, inclusive Harry Potter replacement. So So I finished that on August 27th. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I borrowed it on audio from the library. And then we get into September. So September, I only read 3 books, and the only 5-star book that I gave was a bit of a surprise. It was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. This is very Stephen King dominated. I had a good reading summer, I guess, for Stephen King. Like, it hit a lot of the books that I like. Now, Pet Sematary is my actual first Stephen King. When I was like 9 or 10, I was really into Mary Higgins Clark murder mysteries, and I borrowed a lot of them from my aunt, or like she'd read one and she'd pass it on to me and be like, pass it on. They're very formulaic murder mysteries. I got into those in grade 6, I think. Started with a book report where we had to read a mystery and do like a mystery box. So when I was like, I believe 11, I believe my aunt gifted me this copy for my 11th birthday. And I remember reading it and getting to the ending and being so scared, because like I'd stayed up late reading it well after everybody else was asleep. Like, I was up in my room alone reading this, and I get to the ending and I remember actually being very scared, and like that thrill of being disturbed by something, you know? That's sort of where I became the somebody with an interest in horror literature. I think I read this again when I was 13 before I went into high school, and then I'm not sure if I read it during university. There was a brief window, like when I stopped keeping track of my reading on paper in this folder. There's a brief window between this folder and when I discovered Goodreads, where I didn't record my reading in any way. And I think I reread this again in that window when the film came out. I have heard in the meantime that a lot of people think that this is a bloated book. They don't like it, but I ended up really liking it. And I think that it stands up in terms of it being about a family. They've moved to a new home in a new small town. They're a young family, young couple, still very much in love, very much in the honeymoon phase, despite having 2 children, like 2 young children. They're still in like this like happy bubble of life. You know, they have a lot of possibility, a lot of potential, a lot of future ahead of them. Because it is a very close family story, like it's really about that family dynamic, and then Judd, the neighbor, sort of coming into that family dynamic. I feel like it aged quite well. And like technology wouldn't change this story, like having access to a cell phone or computer or GPS or whatever. Like, technology doesn't make this book any different. It still functions perfectly. So whether you're imagining this happening in the 80s or you're imagining this happening in 2023, like the story still feels very valid. This exploration of grief and mortality still feels really relevant. As a kid, I was like, ooh, things coming back from the dead. As an adult, reading it now, I'm like, oh, that's right, we will all die. At the time, like shortly before I hosted this live stream, I witnessed 2 kids getting hit by a car on a bike and had to give like a police statement, and it was like, oh, that reminder, like, oh yeah, we are just all bags of mostly water, and we are fragile, and like things can change in a moment. And like that, I feel like will stand up. Like if I pick this up in 20 years, again, being older, I assume in 20 years, more people I know are gonna die. That reminder of your mortality will never go away. I had a lot of fun reading it. It's definitely one I will reread again in a few years. So I gave that 5 out of 5 stars. I finished it on September 21st, and that was a reread. Those are the books that I wanted to highlight as my best of the summer. Let me know your thoughts on any of these books in the comments down below. What was your best book of the summer? Before we go, we have to thank my patrons who make videos like this possible. Thank you, patrons, for supporting this work, for giving me the money to buy new books. I have done a little bit of shopping. I picked up a couple of things from the festival and from an anarchist book fair. Patron funds do go into supplying things for the channel, like books, so thank you, patrons. If you are interested in becoming a patron, links to the Patreon page are in the description box down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Keep an eye out for part 2, which are the least good things that I read over the summer. I hope you're all doing well, that you are staying safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!